Because the lie is it's not going to kill you, and that's a lie. The wages of sin is death, and we're living by the sword, and we're going to die by the sword. So how do we change that? Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Very glad to be with you, and I hope you're doing well on this Thursday evening, May 8th, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for episode number 204, Identity. I've been thinking a lot about identity. Uh, why don't we get along? Why do we hate each other? Part of it is, of course, we hate ourselves, and we externalize that and hate other people. But this identity issue, with all of these conflicts, wars, internal division, I'm really interested in trying to heal this. Uh, I want to heal it with the people around me. I want to heal it with you, the audience. I've been doing a lot of shorts and clips that we've been putting up, and I'm going to ask you if you're watching this episode on Royce's X, please just take a minute and repost it to your social. That will help us tremendously. The podcast is growing very quickly, and the short form stuff, I'm delving into some ideas and putting them out there, and boy, the feedback is really intense. Uh, a lot of it's good, a lot of it's very critical, and part of the reason I'm getting these high positives and high negatives is I'm starting to talk more and more about identity because I want to see our society, our culture heal and be a more well-being society. And you got to go through it to get to it. You just don't snap your fingers and all the problems go away. Each one of us are going to have to work through these issues individually. And it really is going to boil down to how we see ourselves and how we see each other. And how important is it? Well, let me share with you. Number one, good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
So while we're fighting over identity, while we're focused on all the pressing issues which fill our hearts and minds with conflict, um, technology is moving forward. So when President Trump talks about reshoring manufacturing, uh, Tanner, where's those jobs?
You're gonna be back here, but in the robot's hands.
In the robot's hands. But there is going to be support roles for a while until the
Yeah.
robots that can fix the robots crack out.
Yeah.
And this goes into the idea of identity. What are we as humans and what have we unleashed? And when I say we, there is a shadow government. We've played President Eisenhower's warning in 1961 about a military industrial complex and a class of technocrats, bureaucrats, and scientists which operate beyond the purview of we the people and are really changing the nature of what it is to be a human without any quote unquote democratic input from the citizens of this great republic. And I want to start to focus on this issue because just because it's a scientific invention does not mean it enhances human well being. In fact, if you look up the cost of a robot versus the cost of a human, guess what? The people that control the means of production don't want humans working in production any longer. What does that mean? Well, people are going to say, oh, Penn, you're a Luddite. It's a word for you to look up, Luddite. Uh, we've been marching forward with technology for hundreds of years, but we've reached a breakaway point where human beings are going to become unnecessary. Uh, I don't like that. So I want to love you and I want to love myself and I want to rebuild our American community so that we have a say in the rollout of these technologies. It is too late, but there's always miracles. For example, President Trump is making some progress in the European conflict of the Third World War. Today, for those of you who are students of history, it's Victory in Europe Day 80 years ago when what they call Nazi Germany surrendered and the war in Europe came to an end. Well, it didn't really come to an end. They're still fighting. They're still fighting there, Tanner. You recognize, if there's peace for a few years, it's not really peace. It's a period of rearmament and taking a rest before they're right back at it, hammer and tong. This war with the Russians has been ongoing for hundreds of years with periods of quiet in between the bloodshed. President Trump and the Ukrainian government signed the long awaited minerals deal since I was with you last. And while this doesn't bring an end to the war, it's a step in the direction of establishing a new set of rules for the region. It does embroil we the people in the Ukraine because the future of the region is predicated on U.S. economic and therefore security involvement in the area. One could say it's not necessarily America first. Why do I say that? Well, it's not in criticism to President Trump, although I certainly have people that are exhorting me every day to criticize President Trump. No, I'm looking at the entire system. President Trump is a very powerful man, but he's not all powerful. Forces are impinging on his presidency and on his decisions from every direction all the time. That's what politics is. What would help us get to peace is when we explore the identity of what it is to be a human, and we no longer accept exploitation and war as the human condition. We're taught from the time we are very little that it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
You've heard that, right?
Yeah, I had it's weird that we're talking about this because I had a really young experience is when I realized that, like, the worth of humans was kinda going away. It was from a light bulb. I remember as a kid, I looked at a light bulb, and I recognized that at school, they weren't teaching me how to build that light bulb, they were teaching me how to buy that light bulb, and as a young kid, that clicked for me.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Now we're to the point that they don't even, w- there are people that call for help to change their light bulbs. Do you recognize that?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's just mind boggling. So the mineral deal is in the can. It's a step in a direction towards peace. The Kremlin reacted by saying that, quote, Trump has broken the Kiev regime to the point where they will have to pay for U.S. aid with mineral resources. He went on, this is Medvedev, he's the former Russian president, and he's the current deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council. Speaking on Telegram, he continued, now they will have to pay for military supplies with the national wealth of a disappearing country. Well, obviously, the Russians are happy to see this. Um, I think everybody wants to get out of this deal. Um, Not everybody, but I think the people that are dying every day want to get out of this deal. It's just hard to get out. I mean, once you breach that line, once you cross that line, it's hard to get back across the line.
I'm just happy that the truth about the minerals are finally being talked about, because I don't even remember what episode it was months ago that we played the clip of, Lindsey Graham, and he had said the quiet part out loud about the minerals. And when I look at the Ukraine war, it just reminds me of the Iraq war in 2003, where it was like we were sold this story of, terrible weapons that they could have, so we have to go in there, but now we know we just want their oil. Ukraine's the same thing. We have to protect democracy. Nah, we just want their minerals. So there's a part of me that I'm happy that
The
that's the
truth is
truth
coming
now.
out.
Yeah, that it's like, hey, we're about the minerals. Like that's what we're trying to protect here.
Well, we're trying to get in on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And I
that's what
want to
I
just
mean.
take long as Tanner mentioned the Iraq war. We didn't, we spent a lot of time going over the roots of the Ukraine crisis and war. We'll probably need to spend some time going over the Iraq issue. Going back to the Jeffrey Sachs piece, where Jeffrey Sachs said that oh no, not Jeffrey Sachs, it was General Wesley Clark that Sachs talked about later. Clark, who was at the time the commander of NATO, said that I think in 2002 or 2003, they had the powers that be in the Pentagon had decided to attack 7 countries,
Yeah,
and Iraq was on the list.
yeah. And shortly
And
thereafter.
and there are those who are going to say, and there seems to be pretty good evidence that this reflected the influence of the Zionist lobby here in the United States. And I say Zionist for a reason. Identity. We're going to get to it later in this broadcast. So, although the minerals deal has been consummated, there are sticking points which may make bringing about a peace impossible. And these sticking points have been leaked so that we all know that peace may not be the outcome of this process. The first thing is that the war is continuing. So it's hard to have peace when people keep killing each other.
Yeah,
That's always a sticking point, right? It's good to the brothers. They like killing each other. I know I said they don't, but they do and they don't, right? It's
yeah,
just the way it is. I mean, I fortunately in my life have seldom had the feeling to take revenge. I say seldom. I'm not a vengeful person by nature or by evolution. I don't know which it is and I don't care. I'm just not vengeful. But people are vengeful.
mm,
People are vengeful. And when you get this level of killing, hey, tough to disengage even if you want to. Uh, Another concern is that the United States reported finalized peace plan suggests that there will be European Union NATO country peacekeepers. This is a problem because Russia fears that the United States could be manipulated by the Europeans into what's called mission creep, and that later we would get into some kind of NATO esque escalation of the conflict if there are European country peacekeepers in Ukraine. Uh, there's a third problem. When there was an original peace agreement that the Western globalists derailed, it include it included an obligation that the Ukraine would partially demilitarize. And President Trump is reluctant to support the demilitarization of Ukraine because he's afraid that it will embolden President Putin to recommence hostilities. There's a fourth disagreement, and that is the Russian demand that Ukraine withdraw from positions they hold in territories that the Russians have claimed as their own in the eastern region of the Ukraine. And, President Trump's not cool with that, neither are the Ukrainians. And it's probably not even functionally possible. Do you think they're just going to pick up and leave? It's a sticking point. Finally, the United States has demanded that the Russians hand over the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant uh, I guess because they don't want them to have control of that nuclear power plant. I mean, I can't say that the Russians would be any less competent than the United States in managing nuclear power plants. Both countries have had meltdowns, but for some reason, the United States wants to control that power plant. So those 5 issues may be insurmountable. And if this war does not end, it will escalate. And, we're seeing the conflict now is breaking out between India and Pakistan.
Yeah, and they're going hard. Like, it was fast.
Well, they hate each other.
Yeah,
And you know why
I've
they hate
heard you
each
say that so many times, but I saw it on display.
Ri Well, you've heard me, but I've been there.
Yeah, you've
I
been
mean, when
there.
you've been there and you see it, it's like, hey, it's one thing to read it in a book. It's another thing to be standing out in front of a building and have a kid begging, and a 6'3" giant, fully mature man hits a 12-year-old kid in the head as hard as he can and looks at me when I give him that look like, what was that for? The only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. Hey, when it gets to that point, when 60-year-old men are knocking out 12-year-old little boys with full force, full power. I mean, come on, you gotta really hate a kid
Yeah.
to hit him that hard. I've never hit a kid that hard.
No.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Come on. So, we've got this, line of conflict that goes from the Ukraine down to Yemen. Um, the Israelis and the Iranians are, of course, involved on either side of that line. Iran is now negotiating with the United States, to, avoid, uh, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's long-held belief that Iran must be destroyed. That's what he believes. And he has motivated the American Zionist community to lobby for such an event. President Trump saying, whoa, whoa, we don't want to do that. Let's negotiate an end to Iran's nuclear aspirations, even though our intelligence community don't know if they can be trusted. It's a question mark. Actually, it's not a question mark for me, but I'm talking about on this specific issue. They might be trustworthy on this issue.
Yeah, who's the team that's assigned to it?
Well, but on this issue, they our United States intelligence apparatus just said that Iran is making no effort to produce a nuclear weapon.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, President Trump has said you can't have one. It's kind of a strange theater going on here.
Yeah.
Kind of a strange theater. So they're negotiating, and the Iranians are saying that this is a more serious negotiation than in times gone by. That's because President Trump is threatening them. President Trump said that the U.S. would be, quote unquote, leading the pack in an attack on Iran if a deal isn't reached on Tehran's nuclear program. He was asked about the possibility of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dragging the U.S. into a war with Iran. And here's how President Trump answered. Quote, you asked if he'd drag me in, like I'd go in unwillingly. No, I may go in very willingly if we can't get a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'll be leading the pack, Trump said. Doesn't sound very America First to me. I'm just saying.
Mm.
I'm not trying to be critical of President Trump because President Trump is a negotiator. And what he's doing is he's putting the pressure on the Iranians, kind of like that. See, you've never watched The Godfather.
I really gotta watch
You
this
got to
movie.
really watch that Godfather because there's a scene in The Godfather where they talk about Luca Brasi uh, put a gun to a guy's head and said, yeah, and then The Godfather said when Luca Brasi had the gun at his temple, either your signature is going to be on this contract or your brains. You make a choice. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's a little bit gangland in the way he's approaching things. And you know what I like about President Trump?
Hmm.
It's always been gangland amongst these leaders. He's just doing it so we can all see it. And people don't like that. Like, oh, President Biden just last night, he was interviewed. He go, who talks like that? Well, you know what? Behind closed doors, you all do.
Yeah.
But, President Trump's letting us all get a look at how it goes down. Well, I want to play number 2 because I want to show you what it looks like when they decide to have their brains on the contract instead of their signature. Because to believe that this won't happen where you live is a belief. It's not necessarily the truth. Let's watch number 2.
لا لسه ما نزلش. ايوه نزل. نزل يا عفو الله يا عفو الله يا عفو الله.
That's good, Tanner. Thank you. So that is the flowering of science. That is the flower of science. Uh, we just watch the deaths of lots of people, and we do it from the comfort of our own homes on our screens. Uh, it's triggering for me just to watch that. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. Just to watch it, just to be there with that. I reject this. I'm asking you to reject this. I'm asking this audience to be politically motivated, to get involved in your local political party, to join the Republican Party, to become a delegate, so that when the next endorsement process comes up, you can choose from amongst the candidates who is going to support this kind of mass slaughter all over the world. Because the lie is it's not going to kill you, and that's a lie. The wages of sin is death, and we're living by the sword, and we're going to die by the sword. So, how do we change that? We change it in our hearts and minds. We work on our identity, and we see ourselves as the children of peace and love, not as inventory to be monetized, and the only thing we do in our life is consume. We've been brainwashed by experts, and it will take expert work of each one of us to extricate ourselves, to free ourselves from this lie. This is a lie. We're living in a massive lie. The truth is a search. I'm not saying I know the truth, but I'm searching for it, and I know this outcome, this worldwide outcome, is of benefit to a handful of people. The rest of us suffer. President Trump, in the midst of this negotiation with the Iranians, has told the buyers of Iranian oil that they will be uh, subject to what's called secondary sanctions. Um, Quote on social media, this is President Trump again: all purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now. China consumes 90% of Iranian petrochemical products. So it's kind of a it's kind of part of this negotiation with the Chinese.
Hmm.
You know, I have no idea how this is going to come out. We did that one little short where I said I don't know. Got great response on YouTube. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Because I'm just saying I don't know. There's all these pundits that are telling everybody how this is going to turn out. Hey, this is live life. This is we're in the deepest, darkest part of the wildest forest you and I have ever been in. And what President Trump is saying to the Chinese, quit supporting the Iranians. He's trying to break what's called the Iron Triangle. Why do they call it iron? Because iron can't be broken between Russia, Iran, and China. They have a real nice, what the Chinese called a good circulation going. The Iranians sell oil to the Chinese. The Chinese do not pay in dollars. They don't get paid in dollars. The Iranians pay them in RMB. Excuse me, the Chinese pay for the Iranian oil in RMB. Then the Iranians buy Chinese finished hard goods, including military products, with that RMB. They're disconnected from the US dollar hegemony, and the Chinese are wielding considerable influence in the region. And President Trump is trying to break that up. He's trying to break China, Russia, and Iran apart. And he's flirting the Iranians. Hey, if you don't heave to, boys, did you see those scenes with those buildings coming down? Who knows how many hundreds of people died in those scenes?
The
You know,
first clips, though, I have to say, because I wanted to ask you this, where it did flash the date and the area. I didn't look, but the first couple clips, one thing I found, I just thought about was where are all the people? That town must have been evacuated because, like, you can hear people screaming, but every single shot, the only people you can see are camera people shooting the buildings.
let me just tell you about myself.
Yeah.
I will not evacuate. I'm one of those people.
I
I
mean, if
won't.
you had your children in your arms, I think you'd have a different
I'm
approach.
just talking, but what about the other people? Their lives don't mean something because they don't have children?
No, not that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, why did I not see a single person run out of those buildings? Did they
Well,
all just sit still?
I don't know. I don't know, but I know there's people in there that died. Because
100%.
even if there was people that were told to evacuate, there are
Yeah,
people that don't evacuate
that's true.
all the time. Man, they had that guy that tied himself to his boat down there and that hurricane was
Yeah,
famous.
yeah, that is true.
Captain Dan, you know? Well, those people don't deserve to die. I don't want to leave my house. I don't want to have to be a refugee.
Yeah,
Those people are refugees. That was scenes of Gaza City. That city is destroyed now. Those people, the ones that survived, have been forced to leave their homes.
yeah.
I mean, it's a tragedy that it's a scar across all of us, and it's all based on identity. So President Trump is trying to break this iron triangle, obviously with 145% tariff on Chinese finished goods. President Trump saying you won't be able to do business with the United States if you buy Iranian petrochemical products doesn't mean anything today. But in the course of this negotiation between Russia and Iran and China, the United States is now talking to all three countries. There is a chance, there is a hope that this could be improved. Am I optimistic? No. There's too many people that think we should do this kind of fighting. People that you and I elect here in the United States, neocons, conservative war hawks, leftists, people that are on the payroll of the industrialists that control the military industrial complex. There are lots of people that think this is good. We're going to look at some of them shortly. Uh, One thing that would help, because this all ties into economy, it's called political economy for a reason. Uh, the United States GDP has contracted in the first quarter. What that means is we're shrinking. And of course, that's going to get blamed on President Trump. The first quarter shrink is really not President Trump. In the second quarter, he's going to have to start to own this. It's his economy. And are we shrinking? Well, I really can't tell. I cannot tell what's going on. I'm in the supply chain. Target.com if you need tires. Tires is a great opportunity uh, for me to know what's going on because it's part of the essential part of the economy. When the tire business slows down, the economy's slowing down, and the tire business is not slowed down yet. It's not slowed down yet, and I'm seeing that. I mean, I see it. I look at the numbers every day, and if you need tires, I'm going to tell you, buy them now. Go to Target.com because the 25% automobile tariffs were imposed starting on May 3rd. So there is now a 25% tax at the border. And just to bring you up to date, I know this is a sidebar. President Trump says they're going to pay for it. And he's partially correct because the suppliers of Target offset that 25% tax by eating 12.5% of it. So in essence, they are paying for it. Their profits have been reduced. We're going to come back and talk about the tire business a little bit later, but I just want to say GDP is contracting. It hasn't hit the tire business yet. When it hits the tire business, oh, that's trouble at River City. Back to this oil thing, and I think there's always a hidden message. There's always a buried lead. Oil, to be profitably extracted, for example, in the Permian Basin, which is West Texas crude, the barrel of oil has to sell between $72 and $88 per barrel for all things to be good in the hood out there in West Texas. When I looked yesterday, it was $58 a barrel. That means it's a loser out there in the West Texas oil field. Same thing up in the Bakken in North Dakota and in many other parts of this country. $58 a barrel indicates that there's things going on that are not healthy. It's too low. Price too low. So when President Trump says to China in this negotiation, we don't want you to buy Iranian oil anymore, what's he really saying? He's saying buy it from the United States of America. That'll help us balance the trade. And of course, the Chinese are going to say, you charge too much for your oil. And President Trump's going to say, that's true. Can you live with 145% tariffs? See, no one's ever talked to the Chinese like this. They've never tried. No one's ever confronted them in this fashion. And when you do, they get pissed. But what are they going to do? I don't know. It's TBD. It's TBD. To be determined. But as oil plunges, part of it is that there has been output restrictions imposed by OPEC Plus, led by Saudi and Russia, to limit the amount of oil that goes on the market, which artificially maintains a higher price. What happens? People cheat, like Kazakhstan. That pisses the Saudis off. But Kazakhstan's just a cover story. What they're really doing is, see, Donald Trump is telegraphing his move. We are going to be a net energy exporter. Remember that? Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
Can't afford to drill at $58 a barrel. The companies can't afford to do it. So the price is down because President Trump has many forces impinging on him. So when he said, and President Trump he's awfully transparent. One would say he doesn't have a filter between his brain and his mouth, but I don't know if that's the case. He may really be committed to radical transparency. I don't know. He talks a lot and tells people what he's going to do. Well, okay, the Saudis said, you want to take our market share? Because the United States is not in OPEC Plus. So we're going to start pumping a lot of oil and replacing OPEC? No, they said, no, you're not going to do that. Because what they do over there in Saudi is they stick a straw in the ground and the oil comes out. Here, you got to frack. And fracking is expensive. We have the oil. but we can't get it to market profitably at $58 a barrel. You see, this is a very complex picture.
Yeah.
If I'm going too fast or too hard, I want to really apologize. I'm really trying to be of service to you. Thank you for being a viewer, a listener. This podcast is growing. Please repost the links. It's growing because you like the content. You're reposting the links. We don't get any help from YouTube on a political podcast, particularly with this kind of politics. Zero. And we're growing every day because of you. Thank you so much for helping us because I want to move the needle. My mission in life is to encourage you to get involved in politics because I don't want to see my home blown up. I would like to say I'm doing it for you, but I'm the guy that won't leave his home.
Mhm.
So if they start cracking off those bombs here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, I'm going to be underneath that rubble. So I don't want to elect to the U.S. Senate people like Adam Schwartzy, who's running, who's a former Navy SEAL, who was a Nikki Haley supporter. When you're a Nikki Haley supporter, you're saying you support the forever wars because that's who she is. So that goes for lots of people here in Minnesota that supported Nikki Haley. I could name them off. I know a bunch of them. I know a bunch of them. But right now, I'm just going to talk about Adam Schwartzy because he's running for Senate. And I don't know the man and I don't know his full platform. I just don't want to elect to the Congress politicians who sell out when they get there. Some of them are sold out before they get there. Why would I vote for that? And I'm asking you in your local area, wherever you are, please pay attention to your local politics. You are the sovereign of your own life. You are the king or queen of this country. That's what republicanism is. Elect people that will bring peace and prosperity to your community.
And I do want to say thank you to all the viewers that are reposting our links. Recently, we're doing a media revamp, so I'm working on the Facebook right now. I know that our Facebook page has not had really any activity, but when I looked up Professor Penn, I see that a lot of you guys are sharing the full podcast, and that was very pleasant for me to find. So thank you guys so much for doing such a good job at spreading this. You really are helping.
Yeah, I don't even want to call it a job. You know, it's not a job. It is a labor of love to try to save our country. That's what we're doing together. Yeah, I want to sell tires, but I want to sell tires so I can stay in business to do this. I have people in my family that think I am absolutely out of my mind. And I woke up this morning. I'm going to tell you, I woke up this morning and the thought ran through my head, what am I doing? I mean, I am sacrificing so much because I love this republic so much for one reason. The founding documents identify a creator that grants me unalienable rights. That makes me love this country because there's hope where there's faith. Where there's no faith, there's not going to be any hope. Look at what humanity has done where there is no faith and there is no hope. We're experts at killing ourselves and each other. Could we become expert at making well-being lives for our children, making health and well-being for ourselves, extending our lives, having lives of meaning and purpose instead of lives of degradation and exploitation? We're taught this is the way it is. I'm doing this to say we could teach ourselves something else. So thank you for helping in that effort. The economy. Well, I'm saying the tire business is hanging in there. It's not going to hang in there much longer. I'm in the truck tire business. I'm talking about tires that go on big over the road trucks. And there's something going on right now called a truck apocalypse. There's a trucker's apocalypse right now. First of all, the interruption of trade is going to crush the trucking industry. Let's play number 3.
You're really expecting a third of the traffic to drop off next week?
Good morning, Becky. And yes, that's right. According to our own port optimizer, which measures the loadings in Asia, will be down just a little bit over 35% next week compared to last year. And it's a precipitous drop in volume with a number of major American retailers stopping all shipments from China based on the tariffs.
Yeah, the China piece of that is the most interesting. That's where the shipments are basically ground to a halt, you've said?
Yes, that's correct. And that makes up about 45% of our business here in Los Angeles, Becky. Now, what we have heard in talking directly to CEOs and senior executives of the shipping lines is they'll try to add a couple of port calls in along the Southeast Asia routes where cargo is still moving, albeit at a 10% tariff. But realistically speaking, until some accord or framework can be reached with China, the volume coming out of there, save a couple of different commodities, will be very light at best.
I was looking at the numbers, and for the first 3 months, you all handled about 2.5 million import containers. That's up 14% year over year. So how much of that was retailers and others trying to really bring forward as much as they possibly could ahead of these tariffs?
A great majority of that volume was advancing inventory, and that started last summertime. Even during the campaign trail, when folks started talking about tariffs and trade policies, some larger retailers across a variety of sectors and manufacturing folks who were bringing in parts and components started to advance that inventory. So we had about 9 months of a run up here. And then this last burst in March really took us to the end of what we call that inventory look. And now precipitous drop overall. And realistically, what we're going to see next is that retailers have about 5 to 7 weeks of full inventories left, and then the choices will lessen.
I'm going to spend some time next week talking about winners and losers in this current economy, but there's 700,000 moves a week that are going away for the trucking industry. Trucking rates are massively depressed, and as it turns out, in researching this, during the COVID period, where there was such sporadic, shut off and then super high demand to reload, there was a bunch of policies put in place, even going back to the Obama administration, which impinged on the trucking industry, creating bubbles, and that bubble is popping. As it turns out, during the COVID period, used trucks were massively overvalued, very similar to the way houses were before the housing crisis of 2008. Many of the trucks you're seeing on the road now are what are called underwater assets. And there's going to be a lot of bankruptcies coming into the trucking industry. There's something called deferrals. That's when a bank is holding a note on a piece of equipment. The company can't pay, they don't have any money, and the bank defers the payment. Why would a bank do that? Well, there's so many trucks that can't tote the note that if they went and repossessed them all, there'd be no place to put the trucks and no demand to resell them. And if the banks wrote all this off because these assets were so overvalued back in 2001, 2021, 2022, the assets were so overvalued that the write-offs would be so big, it would bankrupt banks. We have a banking crisis associated with a bubble in the asset trucks. Nobody's talking about it. But I'm going to tell you, it's a truck apocalypse. It's here right now. Right now. By the way, if you're in the trucking business and you're watching me and you want a great deal on truck tires, get in touch with me. Support@tireget.com. Yes, we have to sell things to keep this studio on air. So thank you for going to TireGet. It's everything you need in tires. Great customer service. You might get to talk to me. I got a good staff. The price is right. In any place in this country for consumer tires, we will mount them 5 minutes from your house. Price is right, convenience, and you have to buy your tires from someone. When you go to TireGet.com, you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you're supporting Free People Radio. And thank you to the people who are doing it. Like Kathy. Kathy, thank you so much. We got so many people supporting more and more all the time. You could do a monthly subscription. They got a lot of people giving us $5 a month. Man, I never even asked for it. And we got people doing it.
Thanks for the support, guys.
It's just unbelievable. But we're working really hard here to build this political community. This is politics we're doing here. Okay. I don't want to fall too far behind. Watch me go through all this news I want to comment on because I can't go to the 4-hour format. Uh, President Trump closed the tariff loophole on online selling of Chinese manufactured goods. There was a loophole. A loophole was if the shipment was under $800, like between family members, there was no tax. You could even beat the 145% tax, the anti-dumping tax, whatever tax, no tax, comes in free. It was called de minimis. Well, the Chinese figured that out. They're smart. They started two great businesses, Temu and Shine. Are you familiar with either of those businesses?
Oh yeah, my girlfriend used to shop at Shein a lot until I kind of learned that it was a part of the Temu trend and everything.
Yeah, well, they have hundreds of thousands of warehouses because there's hundreds of thousands of people that take $800 shipments with no tax and then redistribute from their house. It's crazy. It's so innovative to
Yeah.
get around. You know, there's a saying in China, for every government policy, there's a solution. I will spare you the Chinese. For every government policy, there's a solution. In other words, if you study the policy, there's a workaround. So we in the West, we study the law to comply with it. It's hard for us to get our minds around a group of folks that study the law to circumvent it.
Yeah.
It's, but we're getting there. We're getting there. We're
And it's
getting there.
crazy how like successful that plan actually works for them because I live in an apartment, so our packages are delivered to one room. And sometimes I'm a little nosy and I like to look at what my neighbors are ordering. And Temu and Shein, there are so many Temu packages. I don't know who my neighbor is, but it's like every day something from Temu. So it works. Like there's so many. I walk into that package room. There's more Temu packages than there are Amazon.
Oh, they're kicking the snot out of
Oh
Amazon,
yeah,
but not anymore. Not anymore. It's over for them. They're going to have to find a new workaround. Maybe we'll be a trade agreement with the United States.
yeah,
Could be. I mean, you know how it works, right? If somebody's robbing you, they'll rob you until you stop them. I mean, we've been getting robbed. President Trump has said many times he does not blame the Chinese. He blames our leadership. You know, when I talk to my Chinese friends, they'll say to me, "You leave your door open. What do you expect?" Well, what I would expect if I left my door open is nobody come in and rob my house. But that's because I'm a Christian. I believe that my neighbor is going to treat me the way I believe that my neighbor will treat me the way he wants me to treat him,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
We have that's a judgment we hold. Not everybody holds that judgment. Well, we're sorting that out now. Back to the idea of identity. Back to the idea of trying to come up with one identity. It's called humanity. I'm not saying I'm a globalist. I'm saying we're all people. Doesn't matter what our skin color is. Doesn't matter where we live. I want to maintain the United States of America as a sovereign nation. If I can't convince people not to rob me, I would at least like to make agreement with my fellow Americans that we don't want to be robbed, and we can't even get that handled. I mean, we're divided right in half on these tariffs. If you're on X, you see it yourself. We'll talk about it next week. Here's what I want to pass by before we get to tonight's editorial comments. UK scientists to launch outdoor geoengineering experiments. I thought there was no chemtrails. I thought that was conspiracy theory. Yet if you look online, all over all the globalist newspapers, and you know who they are, The Atlantic, for example, there's a great one. Uh, all over the globalist media, there's all these reports suddenly about geoengineering. I didn't think we geoengineered the planet. Well, why is this out there now? Suddenly, like a rash on your ass. Because Tulsi Gabbard, sorry,
You do.
sorry,
You get me with your one-liners. They come out of nowhere.
sorry, Tanner. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, is going to release the files going back to 1994 on United States government chemtrailing. They've been doing it all along. So what do the globalists do? They get out in front of it and make it look like it's always been there.
Yeah, it's always, oh, we've known about this. Like, you guys are just learning about this. It's the way they act.
Well,
It's
I'm just
once the
saying.
secret's out, they act
Well,
like it's
that's what
common
happens when
knowledge.
transparency and truth starts to pop up out of a hole like a gopher, and everybody goes, wow, what's that, truth? We're going to have to scramble and act truthful.
Yeah.
See, truth spreads, peace spreads, love spreads, hate spreads, lies spread, war spreads. You are in control of what proliferates in the world. You, if you get off your ass and go join your party, I know that was kind of pushy and directive, but I don't want to die in one of those bombs falling on my house because I'm not going to evacuate. You know, I'm the guy when they have the tornado warning, I go outside and want to watch the tornado. I'm goofy. I get it. But you know how many goofy people there are? Do the goofy deserve to die? No, I don't think so. I think it's a big world and there's a lot of different opinions and we can all learn to get along. If we would learn to speak eloquently and kindly, we'll come up with better ideas. Please. You are actually the most powerful person on this planet if you'd go be a delegate. And what does it take of your time to be that powerful person? It's 6 hours a year. I'm working on Tanner. I'm going to get him into the delegate process in 2026. I have a whole segment on the tire business that I'm going to do. In fact, as I was in the shower this morning, I was thinking we should start doing shorts just on the tire business because the tire business is like a thermometer of the whole world's economy because you got to have tires.
Yeah.
We got to have tires. Pirelli is a very well-known name. Do you know the name Pirelli?
It's a tire company, right?
It's a very, very well-known tire company.
Yeah.
Builds very expensive, very popular, very high-quality tires. And it used to be an Italian company. Italy. You know, Michelin is a French company. Continental is a German company. You know, companies that develop tire manufacturing. The Chinese bought Pirelli. A company called Sinochem bought Pirelli. So now you're paying like $300-400 for a tire. It doesn't cost $250 to build that tire. That tire's getting built for, I don't know, $40. And you're buying it for $350. It's a great business for the Chinese. It's the first time in the tire business they got into the concept of branding. So now they don't just own the means of production, they own the entire cycle of that tire, from production to distribution, marketing, the whole shamoli. They got the whole package working. And President Trump invited Italian Prime Minister Meloni to come to the White House. And she came. She's a very charismatic figure for a world leader. She came, they talked. It was all good. She went back to Italy. And the first week she was back in Italy, you'll never guess what happened. You can't guess. None of you can guess it because it's really off the hook. She came back. She was home a week. And here's what happened. The Italian government issued a decree, and they demanded, and the board of directors of Pirelli agreed, to end Chinese control of Pirelli. They just took it away from them.
You can just do that.
No, it's called piracy. It's the old British business model, slavery, drugs, and piracy. The Chinese bought it, a company called Sinochem, and Pirelli said the decision to revoke Sinochem's control was a, quote, first but not decisive step towards ensuring that its governance is in compliance with the requirements. Turns out that the U.S. is a very key market for Pirelli. 25% of its profits come from its U.S. sales. And they invoked something called the golden power. In other words, whoever has the gold makes the rules. They invoked the golden power, and they took away Sinochem's control of Pirelli. Now, I don't know if they're going to strip them of their ownership, as the European Union did. The Russians had $350 billion in European banks. They just took control of the money, and they've been taking the interest off that money and using it to buy weapons to kill Russians. That's a dirty deal. That would piss me off, wouldn't it?
Okay.
Use my own money to kill me? That'd piss me off. Now, here's the Chinese. they actually did something which is unusual for the Chinese. They actually bought an asset. Usually, they steal it. In this case, they actually did the right thing. They came in, they bought it, they're operating it, it's working good, and their ownership was stripped, or their control was stripped. We'll see about their ownership. It's kind of a disincentive to play by the rules, but hey, this is where we are right now. Slavery, drugs, and piracy. The piracy part is stealing things from people, like those minerals in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay, Linglong, a Chinese tire company, is going to build a tire factory in Brazil. Brazil is a World Economic Forum poster child. The former presidential candidate there, Bolsonaro, he was indicted. Lula, the communist in charge of the country, is deeply allied with the Chinese. And Linglong is going to build a factory there, a giant factory. And it's just, a hop, skip, and a jump away from the U.S. border. Something to think about. Okay, this goes into tariffs and control. The United States Senate, our senators are Republican senators. Some of them joined with the Democrats and took a real run at removing from President Trump his authority on tariffs. It failed, just failed by a whisker. The usual suspects sided with the Democrats. This was an interesting vote because Mitch McConnell didn't show up to vote. Now, we know he's old and we know he's sick, but they could have wheeled him in there. If he would have voted, President Trump couldn't do any of this. So I don't know what kind of show and tell story this is. It could just be that Mitch McConnell is so screwed up, he couldn't show up.
Yeah.
I doubt it. But I don't have any 8x10 glossies. I'm just saying we have Republicans like Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, who we'll talk about again shortly. They're working overtime to defeat President Trump and his agenda. That's why things are not going in a straight line. President Trump is getting a lot of warp and woof. For example, a judge bars deportation under the Alien Enemies Act as unlawful. So we got these millions and millions and millions of people, and President Trump imposed the Aliens Enemy Act to just round them up and ship them out. And a judge said, oh, we're denying these millions of people due process. Well, they didn't have due process on the way in. They broke the law and they just came in, right?
Hmm.
If we're going to give due process to all the illegal aliens in the country, it's going to take lifetimes to process these people. This is a new spin on Cloward Piven. We've talked about the Cloward Piven model. The way to make the country communist is to break the system. I never thought about this application of Cloward and Piven, but this is it. There are so many illegals in this country. If you give them due process, they'll never leave because they'll be having trials for the next 100 years. How are we going to deal with this? This is a constitutional crisis problem. It's a crisis. This is the crisis. We'll talk about it more. I want to get to the Min GOP and identity. I already said that Adam Schwartzy is not my guy for Senate. He is Alex Plekish's guy. Alex Plekish, the chairman of Min GOP, is running all over touting Adam Schwartzy. And Alex, I don't think that's your role. I know you watch, and hello, how you doing? You're welcome to come on Free People Radio anytime you want to, where I guarantee you a elevated and erudite conversation where you can respond to my critiques. Please come on. I mean, we just had AK Kamar on. You wouldn't want AK to get a drop on you. Come on. You're invited. Anybody that knows Alex, tell them to come on. People are coming on. They're coming on because people are watching this. They're watching this. And they're watching it because the content is good. Now, I respect my former antagonist when he beat me, Stan Hamilton. I have to respect him. Stan is now the executive of CD3. He's copied me. He's got his own podcast, but nobody's watching. See, this is the place where people are watching. Thank you. Spread it out. Make them watch more. You, the audience, particularly if you're in Minnesota. because when everybody's watching, they have to show up and then they have to listen to you. You can join me on X and watch the fireworks there. You can join me on Getter and watch the fireworks there. We, the people, are represented by who we elect. And when they know we are watching them, because it's their job to represent us, they'll have to represent us. I don't care if Jim Nash is a rhino, if he votes America first. And how's he going to do that? When we watch what he's doing. Like, for example, when he's voting to increase Attorney General Keith Ellison's budget of that office, giving Ellison the financial means to pursue lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit against the Trump administration, gumming up the works of Trump's efforts to make the country a sovereign nation again. I don't know why Jim Nash. Jim, you're welcome to come on here. Tell the people why you're doing this. I want to know. I know you have a reason. I just don't understand it. I know you have a reason. I would like to know why you're doing this. And Schwartzy, you're welcome to come on here. And it's not because I'm friends with Royce and Royce is part of Free People Radio. You're a player. You want to be in the Senate. Tell me why you went on Michael Broadcorp's podcast. What are, either Adam, either you don't know what's going on or you just stuck your thumb in every America First delegate and voter in Minnesota. Michael Broadcorp's podcast is the kiss of death for anybody that wants to get elected. You must not have known, or you really want to piss off the citizens of Minnesota. You pissed me off going on there. Why would you do that? I would like to respect you. Please be respectable. Let's have an erudite and elevated conversation. You could come right in here and I would host a debate between Adam Schwartzy and Royce White right here on the Professor Penn podcast. Wouldn't that be cool? It would be so cool. We don't have to do this the old-fashioned way. We don't got to wait till 3 weeks before the election. Let's get into it. We're in World War III after all. And I'm saying that as a Nikki Haley supporter, you're disqualified in my book from getting endorsed and getting elected. But you might be able to give me a response to that. It might be a rational response. You could change my mind. Because guess what? My mind and my heart are open because I'm involved for the search for truth. And I want everyone in this audience to have an open heart and an open mind. Because guess what? I voted for George W. Bush and I changed. And I bet most of you who are America First started out as liberals, became conservatives, and now you're America First. You went through the same evolution that I did. Because my heart's open. My ears are open. I want these people to reflect us, we the people. And how you do it is you use this technology not like a tool of manipulation, but a tool for seeking the truth.
And gentlemen, I have an offer that might incentivize you guys to come in. You can actually see what I look like and put a face to the name. So if any of you guys want to come in and see what Tanner looks like.
Yeah, Tanner and I have a deal. Tanner gets to stay off camera. He's a young man with a child and a beautiful soon-to-be wife. And I understand because I'm going to tell you, there is some risk in doing what I do. And I'm going to tell all of you, I won't commit suicide. I'll guarantee you that. Tom Emmer, who runs Minnesota, with his paid employees like Bobby Benson down in CD6. Tom Emmer, I just for what they call, you have to take this out, but just for shits and grins. Shits and grins. I just looked up Tom Emmer's expenditures in his campaign because Michael Broadcorp and Tom Hauser and all these leftists are so interested in looking at Royce White's expenditures. And just let me take a second on that. Broadcorp and Gray G, these people are getting paid to trash certain people. I watched Broadcorp trash Brett Bussman, the new executive CD7, the new chair there, as being a flat earther. That is so far down the drain pipe, Brett Bussman. And I don't mean that negatively to you, Brett, but you're just the chair of a congressional district committee. I mean, and you brought forth the ire of Michael Broadcorp. He labeled you as a flat earther. That to me is telling me that Michael Broadcorp is still on somebody's payroll. Because why would you take airtime for that? No, I mean, nobody knows who Brett is. I know, Brett, you're welcome to come on here because to me, you're important. But in the great scheme of things, we're getting into the weeds here. So these people are getting paid or they want to get paid, and there's tons of them. And there was this great effort to trash Royce White. And I'm going to tell you, people come into my ex all the time and they tell me lies. They don't mean to be lying. They believe what other people told them. That is the danger. I make that mistake too. Sometimes I'll see something on X and it's, a clip or it's something that's not in its full context and I'll reuse it. And, I'm chagrined when that happens. But let us search for truth together. Let us understand why people did what they did. Let us understand what they actually did and what is actually going on. For example, there was all these allegations of Royce White stealing this and stealing that. There's been no actions taken by the government against Royce. Royce isn't stealing anything. People say he's a grifter. A grifter? Man, I know the guy. He's given everything he has to try to pursue the America First maga agenda as a politician. He's not making any money doing this. He's not grifting anything. Please buy some tires. I'd like to see him get a paycheck. It's really discouraging to see the misinformation that is put out into the world by influencers. Now, I say I'm searching for truth, and when I'm wrong, I'll talk about it. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, about a mistake that I made that somebody brought to my attention. But, if I'm making a mistake talking about Jim Nash or Tom Emmer or Bobby Benson, you guys are welcome to come on here. I mean, I'm trying to do the best I can to understand what's going on based on the best available information that I can find. But the best available information is you coming on and talking to the voters through this podcast. So I went because there's all of these allegations that Tom Hauser started on KSTP on this clip. I was sitting there where they were talking about Royce's credit card fees. And Royce tried to explain that he can't raise money from the traditional Republican donors. They're out there. They just don't like Royce because Royce wants to have a new system that's focused on the people and not the donors. So why would the donors give him any money? They don't want him to win. He's trying to break up that oligopoly of people that are exploiting the human beings that we call American citizens, turning us into inventory instead of seeing us as sovereign citizens. He's not going to get that kind of money. So he has to go out to the people. Where's the list? Well, there are companies, they're called bundlers, that have these lists, and they go out and solicit these donations, and they take a very high percentage of the first donation, like most of it. But the second time that citizen donates, Royce gets most of it. That's the best he can do to raise money, and he's raising a lot of money because there are a lot of people that are tired of this exploitation. Okay, so I was thinking, let me go look at Royce's stuff, and I said, well, as long as I'm here, let me look at Tom Emmer. And guess what I found? And you can put this up. Here's Tom Emmer donating to Don Bacon for Congress. Don Bacon, the most virulent anti-Trumper in the U.S. Congress. And here's Tom Emmer supporting him. Now, Representative Emmer, I know you have your reasons for doing this. You are the House Majority Whip, after all. I don't see you supporting everybody, but you're supporting Don Bacon. Could you come on and explain to me why you did that? Because that was your decision. It's your campaign. But how I'm taking it as American citizen, you're supporting, while you're wearing that red MAGA hat in every tweet that you tweet, every post that you make, Donald Trump is the greatest thing since sliced bread, yet you're giving money to the guy that every time he talks, he's trashing President Trump. It's It's behavior that needs explanation. Just like I'd like Jim Nash to explain why he wants to expand. Jim Nash is a Republican, by the way, just so you know, Tanner. He's a Republican. So he's giving more money to Keith Ellison, who's a leftist attorney general here in Minnesota, who I think has sued the Trump administration 18 times. That takes money. Yet Jim Nash is giving him more money. Oh, Jim Nash is from CD6. Where's Tom Emmer from? Oh, CD6. That's where Julia Coleman is from. Oh, there's all these people from CD6. That's where Bobby Benson is from. That's why I say Tom Emmer runs the state of Minnesota. You know, Harry Niska, you could come in and comment on this. Thank you for responding to my post. Y'all going to have to deal with this now. The people are coming. They're coming digitally. They're going to come in person. They're going to come to change Minnesota and every state in this union if my prayers are answered. The Jewish identity. You know, it's taken me from 1989 till about 2 weeks ago to really want to deal with this. And I want to say it was at Royce's behest. The first time I ever had a conversation with Royce, he said to me that Jews were the linchpin of the New World Order. And my mind was blown by him saying that. I thought about it a lot, and I thought about the state of Israel and the Holocaust. And I realized what an important piece, an important part in the New World Order or in the post-World War II Democrat liberal order that women and Jews and blacks play. We are the Jews and blacks and women. We are the protoplasm that the overlords use to create a narrative which justify the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. Jews, we wouldn't want to have another Holocaust again, would we? We must have global governance to prevent a global war. Okay, Jews, great. Blacks, black people. I try not to comment on black people and women because I'm neither black nor a woman. But if you're black and you're listening, and thank you for listening, how are black people a pawn in this political dialogue? Well, I'm going to say one way is since 1865, when the Union prevailed and the South was defeated, they were defeated, militarily, but racism was not defeated. So an administrative state was erected to ensure that black citizens got the full benefit and rights of being Americans because it required oversight. Because left to their own devices, the South was not going to grant black people the status that they deserved as human beings living in our country. After all, the state of Mississippi only ratified the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in 1995. It took them 30 years to get there. So, there was a reason, but the administrative state grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And one of the reasons it has grown is to protect the rights of minorities, which includes women. So Jews and blacks and women as oppressed peoples, because they were, and they are oppressed peoples, justify the size and scope of a Leviathan government. But I don't want to get into the whole narrative of why these groups are the linchpin of the Democrat liberal order. I want to speak specifically about my Jewish identity, and the path started to be real about this when Royce and I first met. And this goes back for me to 1989, because I was raised in a Jewish family. My parents lost their faith. My parents lived through World War II. My family was decimated in World War II. So for those that are watching that doubt the existence of the Holocaust, or they've been told the Holocaust numbers are inflated, or that it never happened. I grew up with people that had the tattoos on their forearms. I remember it. I can see it in my mind's eye. It was traumatizing. These people in my family that I knew were the walking dead. What they had gone through had so compromised them that just being around them was emotionally traumatizing. And they didn't mean to be that way. Most of them didn't talk at all. I mean, they didn't talk. No words came out of their mouth. When they did talk about what happened, and the memories come back to me, what they said altered my life forever, and not in a good way. And I went off on a path, because my parents had become secular. And my father had gone to rabbinical school, and he gave that up because of World War II. He couldn't square the circle. How could a loving God allow the destruction of half the Jewish people in 5 years? He couldn't square that circle. So he dedicated his life to the search for truth through academia, and his area of study was racism, anti-Semitism, and the relationship between science and religion. And I've said on this podcast, and I did not set out, uh, first of all, Professor Penn podcast, that was not my idea. That was the producer's idea to call it the Professor Penn podcast. My father was a professor. He was a great man, and he spent his life trying to deal with these issues. And I find myself, the apple did not fall far from the tree, because here I am doing the same thing he was doing. And I love my father, and I hope I can live up to the. Uh, I mean, he was incredible. He was the first American academic that labeled Darwin and Spencer and Galton as racists. Nobody ever thought that way in the 60s, because our academic institutions had been captured by the British intellectual and the European intellectual tradition, which is really two ideologies, Darwinism and Marxism. My father stood up and said, "Hey, these people are racists." And they fired him for saying that. So, my father fought. He had a fight. He didn't just fought with words. He actually had to fight for his job, fight for his life, you know, uh, searching for truth. And so I grew up in that environment where, while my father was, in the rabbinical school, he spoke fluent Hebrew, he spoke fluent Yiddish, he spoke fluent German, he spoke fluent Russian. I grew up in that environment, but my grandparents, man, these were old timers. These people were religious. And my father, to honor his parents, we lived a religious life. We had a kosher home. He wasn't really down with it, wasn't really, he gave it up because of the Holocaust and his loss of faith, but he wouldn't disrespect his father, because honor your mother and your father such that your days on this earth will be lengthened. And my father lived to be 89 years old. So he did his deal. He did the deal. And so I got a religious upbringing, and I prayed every day, and I speak Hebrew and I read Hebrew, and I've been studying the Bible in Hebrew since I've been 6 years old. And in 1989, I was in a sketchy situation. And as I've said on the podcast before, Christ appeared to me, and all it did was disturb me, because I had no symbology about Christ, never studied Christ. Like, Jewish people don't say awful things about Jesus Christ. He's just not the Messiah to Jewish people. I mean, I know there's all this stuff on X about he's, boiling in excrement in hell, and that's not how I grew up. I mean, I never heard that. I've read it recently on X. All anybody said to me is he was he's not who the Christians think he was, and that was it. Nobody said anything more. Focus on God. Okay, good. So there wasn't this, but I knew enough to know that there was a judgment in Judaism against Christ. And I'm saying this because I had no symbology, no study, no iconology. There was no images of Christ in my house. I didn't know any Christmas carols, you know. And then Christ appeared to me, and I remember in my mind's eye, I said to myself, man, that's Jesus Christ. How can this be? That doesn't make any sense. Jesus Christ is a real deal. Because guess what? I am lucky enough, and for those of you like Michael Broadcorp are going to say I'm crazy, say it away. Because for me, this is my reality. I got to deal with it. I didn't look to deal with it. I didn't ask to deal with it. I was not searching for Jesus Christ or a relationship with the Holy Ghost. None of that was in my mind. It was not in my heart. It wasn't in my life. I was going to synagogue. I was walking to synagogue for the Jewish people that are hearing me. I was putting on tefillin every day. I was wearing a tallis when I prayed. For those of you who are not Jewish, you don't know what this means, but it's saying to the Jewish people that I was deeply enmeshed in traditional Judaism as a ritual, keeping the holidays, walking on the Saturdays, keeping kosher, and then shazam! And I couldn't even talk about it because I wanted to honor my father the way he wanted to honor his father. So I held this deep inside. I did my own study. I started reading beyond the Old Testament, read the New Testament, started to study, tried to think this thing through, but I never talked about it because my father was alive and I needed to honor my father. My father died in 2019, just before COVID hit. I started to talk out about it a little bit, just a little. And then I met Royce, and we started talking about it more and more. And I still wasn't really ready to talk about the Jewish identity. Um, I was going to do an RAV for Royce to fill in for him. For those that don't know, Royce has a show on Real America's Voice. You can download the app for free. He's on every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time till 9, just before Steve Bannon comes on with War Room. It's a big show. It's really widely distributed, big audience. And Royce sometimes can't do it. And I fill in for him. He said, man, you should talk about what's going on with the Jewish identity. And I went by the show and I couldn't say a word. Couldn't say anything because I was so conflicted about, well, what do I say? How do I say it? What's the implications to me when I say it? Because let me tell you a story. When there's two Jewish people in the room, there's three opinions. So when you start talking about matters related to Jewishness, you're going to get some people that are not going to be happy. And they're going to say, I don't know as much as them. I'm not religious. And all I'm doing is making I statements. I am not trying to tell you, any viewer or listener, what conclusion you come to. I can only come to my own conclusions for me. And I'm sharing them because I'm called to share them in my own heart. I feel it's time for me to start to talk about these things because the Jewish identity is critical, just critical to the outcomes we have politically in this country starting today. Tanner, could you please play number 4?
A majority of Gen Z have an unfavorable impression of Israel. And my friends, I think the reason for that is that we're losing the digital war. Okay, they're getting their information from TikTok and whatever it is, and we're losing that war. When you think about it, the masters of the universe are Jews. We've got Altman and AI, we got Zuckerberg, we got Sergey Brin, we got the whole group across the board. Jan Combs, founded WhatsApp. It's us. And we have to figure out a way to win the digital battle. Amelia, we got to get our digital sneakers on so that the truth can prevail over the lies. And when we do that, the future of Israel will be stronger because a majority of all Americans will support Israel. We'll make that happen. We have to make it happen. Thank you. Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
That is Senator Norm Coleman, former senator right here from Minnesota, somebody I've spent time with personally, talking about Jews are the masters of the universe. Former Senator Coleman, I know you were speaking to a room full of Jewish people. Jews are not the masters of the universe. Jews are the servants of the Lord who have dedicated their lives to a certain kind of behavior that is intended to be a light to the world. It doesn't make anybody a master. It makes one a servant. And then the Jews that he lists off, they're not Jews. They're technologists. Sergey Brin, these people are the leaders of the digital revolution. There's nothing Jewish about that. Nothing Jewish about it at all. That's science and technology. I have to reject this and I have to reject at the end the Hebrew that he used. Because much like the Republican Party of Minnesota, when they asked for Christ to bless the event and stand on God's principles, and then they want to go, pro-abortion, I'm not against the people voting for a pro-abortion outcome if that's what the people vote for. Just don't wrap it in the cloth of Christ. And Norm Coleman, don't uh, wrap your encouraging of propaganda, digital propaganda. Your truth is not the truth. My truth is not your truth. We just have to learn to work together and to have our identities be infused with love of ourselves and love of each other. To bastion against one truth is going to prevail over another, or one propagandist will be better than another. So the use of the term masters of the universe, that's too much for me. Can't take it. A Jewish person is humble in spirit, humble in ambition. I mean, how rich can you get when you got to pray 3 times a day and keep all the Jewish ritual? There isn't sufficient time to pursue riches. Remember that, my fellow Jews? Did you know anybody like that? Like my grandfather. He earned a living. He owned a company. He had a fruit distribution company. In fact, it was called Fruit Distributors. But how much time did he really have to devote to making money when his mind was filled with prayer and giving charity and studying the Torah, acts of loving kindness? How much time did he really have? We've lost our way here in the United States of America. Let's listen to a clip number 5 from Rabbi Shmuley.
I want you to know that I will die the way I was born, a believing Jew. That there is no power in the universe, including you, God, creator of heaven and earth, he who fills the infinite expanse of space. I, as a Jew, am stronger than you. My name is Israel, he who wrestles with God and is victorious. I will die with my faith intact. There is nothing you can do.
I got a feedback from this. I put this up as a short form clip, and I had a response from a viewer. He said in that clip, Rabbi Shmuley was telling a classic Holocaust story called Yossi Rakover Talks to God by Zvi Kolitz. These words were said by someone who died in the Holocaust. It doesn't come from Shmuley, so I don't know why you are saying it's awful. Learn not to digest propaganda spread by anti-Semites. Well, I have a response to Rabbi Shmuley and to this viewer. Rabbi Shmuley is a very controversial character. Standing there in a cowboy hat with a temporary tattoo of the Israeli flag on his cheek, saying those words with that kind of affect, stands on its own. I really don't care if it's a clip cut out of context. Rabbi Shmuley is a public figure. He needs to know how his words are going to be received. So I apologize if it is true, which I'm not sure, that this was the intent, that Rabbi Shmuley was up to something completely different and this clip was taken out of context. That may be true. That may be true. And that's what I mean about searching for truth. You have to be careful. Sometimes you repost things that you don't fully understand. But I'm going to say those words, even if they were written by someone who died in the Holocaust, no Jew is stronger than the master of all creation. And because the man died in the Holocaust, doesn't make him correct. It made him dead because he's Jewish. How he responded to that could have been ultimately sacrilegious, as my parents were when they lost their faith because of the Holocaust. That's the point of the Holocaust. The point of the Holocaust, as you read it in the textbooks, was to kill the Jews. But the real esoteric point of it was to break the connection between the people and the search for truth, to end the religious period and bring forth the scientific period, which we call the post-World War II democrat liberal order. So if we're going to let Hitler prevail, we will lose our faith. If we would like to defeat Hitler, we will search for truth. And that clip doesn't help. It doesn't help. Why give fodder to people that are anti Semitic and say, out the words of my mouth, that Jews are greater than God? Sounds rather satanic, even if it's taken out of context. So let's listen to how the Jews are used. Let's listen to number 6, a skullduggerous character you're all going to recognize.
Do not accept and shrug your shoulders at the normalization of untruths, because we're living in an era now, there's so much distortion of reality, outright fabrication, lying, conspiracy theories, that it's so prevalent that people sort of shrug their shoulders and say, well, nothing to do about it, it's the new normal. No, do not accept that as the new normal, because whenever you have the acceptance of untruths and distortions, ultimately it's going to erode at the foundation of the social order and our democracy. And I think history has shown that. If anybody just looks back as recently as the 1930s and early 40s in Europe when that happened, be careful. Don't accept the normalization of untruths.
Don't accept the question of Dr. Fauci's truth, because if you do, it's Germany in the 1930s and 40s. That's the use of the Jewish identity in the Holocaust to support the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which stands on the edifice of science. That's the use thereof. And I was thinking about this as I was watching these clips. You know, the real subtext of what is going around politically in Minnesota and other states about Royce White, what these people have really pushed forward that I see all the time in Republican Party delegates, is that he's anti-Semitic. Any of you figured out I'm Jewish and that Royce and I are really good friends? You know, real anti-Semitic people don't make friends with Jews. I know Royce. He's not anti-Semitic at all. He's not anti-anything at all, except people who are cowardly and full of you-know-what, turning our country over to tyranny. He's against that. But any race, color, creed, sectarian, whatever, he has no animus in his heart towards people. He questioned not Judaism, but Zionism. And there is a difference between the two. Although in terms of identity, we've become confused as Jews and as the American people. You know, if the Jews are confused about their identity, if the Jews confused, like Norm Coleman, his identity as a Zionist, he's not a practicing Jew that I can see or I've ever seen. Maybe he is. Norm, you're welcome to come on and talk to me. I'd love to learn about how you practice Judaism, but you're certainly a purveyor of Zionism. You're the head dude at the RJC, the Republican Jewish Committee, which is one of the primary Zionist lobbying groups. It should be the RZC, but it's the RJC because that identity of Jewishness and Zionism has become confused. When I grew up in the 50s and 60s here in St. Paul, Minnesota, the people I grew up with, the religious people, they were opposed to the formation of the state of Israel because they knew the people that were there. You know, they were cousins, right? My forebears came to the United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where you could practice your religion as a protected right because there was a separation of church and state. You could practice your religion. You could pursue your own life, your own happiness. You were safe to be who you wanted to be. They came here. But the cousin, they went to Israel. You know why they went there? They were Marxist Bolsheviks. That was the formation of Israel. It was formed by socialists, Marxists, Bolsheviks, whatever you want to call them. It's all the same to me. I know people will get mad about that, but I'm just going to tell you how I see it from my street corner. It's all on the same spectrum of faithlessness because Marxism is a repudiation of faith. So a lot of religious Jews, most of the religious people came here, and the Zionists, they went to Israel. And it took decades of what uh, Norm Coleman called getting your digital sneakers on, getting your digital shoes on. Of course, it wasn't digital in those days. Took decades of propaganda. And I was propagandized, so I know, to get American Jews to accept Israel as the Jewish state. It wasn't that way at the beginning. And now the identities have become fused and confused. Fused together and confused. There's a difference between being Jewish and being a Zionist. That doesn't mean to say you couldn't be Jewish and be a Zionist. It's confusing even for me, and I'm going to tell you why it's confusing. I don't want to see all the people in Israel killed. I don't want to see anti-Semitism let loose again such that all the Jews are murdered. And that's the use of the Jewish identity to maintain this democrat liberal order, because it's a real possibility. It's a real possibility. But let me play for you a Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, a pretty well-known rabbi who speaks to these issues fearlessly from his street corner. These are the kind of people I grew up with. Please, number 7.
Minister of Security of Israel is currently dirtying this beautiful country with his presence. Ben-Gvir regularly tramples upon the holiness of the Temple Mount, violating its sanctity, violating Jewish law, and compromising the safety and security of Jewish people. Minister of Security, all you've secured, Mr. Ben-Gvir, by your behavior, is a designated place in the lowest pits of hell waiting for you. The only thing you've secured is endangering Jews. You are responsible for the police brutality against the non-Zionist Jews in the Holy Land. Jews follow the God-given religion of Judaism. Zionists follow the nationalist construct of Zionism. People like Ben-Gvir, who claim to be religious. He wears a yarmulke like me. I have something to tell you, Mr. Ben-Gvir. If you want to be a Zionist, Ben-Gvir, take off your yarmulke, stop keeping Shabbos, eat some pork, and leave Judaism alone. Leave us alone. Don't say things and do things and make people think it's the name of the Jews.
Well, that pretty much sums up the sentiments of a lot of people. Half the people in Israel are opposed to the Netanyahu government. I am about America. I came here. I embrace my American citizenship. I want a healthy America. I want a safe America for all people that live here. I want to be constitutional. I want to restore the goodness that comes with having a righteous country. That's what I'm working for with you. Now we have to define what righteous means. That's what politics is about. That's why we're having this conversation. But I'm trying to draw this distinction between Jewishness and Zionism because it's weighed on my heart. I haven't been able to talk about it. The two identities are fused and confused. Just for example, with Royce White, just him questioning what's going on in Israel has led the Republican Party stalwarts, led by Boschwitz and Coleman and Gazelka and Benson, Kendall Qualls, the usual suspects, to come out and say, oh, you're anti-Semitic. We can't have you involved. You're anti-Semitic. In fact, the person who started the Royce White as anti-Semitic, that guy is the campaign manager of Adam Schwartzy. He was the one that called me and said, Royce White's getting involved in the campaign 2022 for Ilhan Omar's seat. We don't have to worry about him. He's an anti-Semite. I said, he's an anti-Semite? Hell, I've been watching him on television. I don't read that in him. That's why I met Royce, this political operative who's running Adam Schwartzy's campaign, who has the support of Alex Plekish and all of the hierarchy of the party because they want an electable candidate. That's what they're saying. Someone who's electable, who's a Zionist, who's dependable on defense matters. See, that political operative told me Royce White was an anti-Semite. That's why I met Royce, because I have to see it for myself. And what did I find? A thoughtful, sensitive, responsible person, flawed like all the rest of us, flawed like me, who is trying to work his life towards a better place where he can make a positive impact for his community. And yet he's labeled anti-Semitic, which is a scurrilous charge. I've been labeled anti-Semitic because I went after a woman named Mary Amlaw, who's another one of these party apparatchiks. She's waving an Israeli flag. I said, Mary, put that flag down. Don't use the Jewish people in pursuit of your political ambitions. Another CD6, Amorite. And she's running around saying I'm anti-Semitic. No, I love the Jewish people. I pray in Hebrew. I'm trying to deal with the issues that are before me this day. So I want to thank you for being here with us tonight. These are serious topics. I'm trying to present them in a way that is harmonizing and not divisive. I want to be someone who brings our state together, our community together. I only want to criticize the people when they lie. If you disagree with me and you are honest about it, I will respect you as a family member. When you lie to me, that I cannot abide. Thanks very much. Be well. Have a great weekend. And God willing, we look forward to being back with you next Tuesday night. Repost the links. Thank you very much, Tanner.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.